博士，您曾经在过去的访问当中有提到说这一次疫情对于全球的公共卫生来说是一记警钟，好像帮大家都上了一课。所以您可以帮我们做一个总结嘛？就从2020年的年底一直到今年2021年一整年，我们看到这个疫情在这全球造成了这么广泛的影响，我们到底学到了一些什么样的教训呢？
Of course, we learn a lot scientifically about these viruses, and we learn a lot about how quickly we could develop technology to come up with drugs and antibodies and vaccines. The speed with which all of these things have been developed over the last 18 months is truly unprecedented and truly amazing. I think the overall lesson, particularly from the Taiwan perspective, is I think Taiwan was experienced after SARS in 2002, 2003, and that prepared the country well to respond to COVID. And the lesson I would say is do not rest on that early success. Anticipate what science will offer. And that's why I said earlier, the perspective in 2020 is different from that of 2021. And I think in retrospect now, if we look back, what could Taiwan do better? Well, I would say be an earlier adopter of vaccines in the same way that Israel has done, for example. I think Taiwan was relatively speaking slow in doing so. And therefore now it will have to be slower in opening up. I think Taiwan, like Israel, has a great deal of purchasing power and could have, one way or another, been more aggressive in that. So that's one lesson that I certainly took away from these observations. I would say that we still need to continue to invest in pandemic preparedness. There will be more. It may not be a coronavirus, but it will be some other pathogen, particularly those that are transmitted via the respiratory system and are easily passed from person to person. And the lesson is, this is one of the largest threat to global security. It's not, it's up there with climate change. Every nation has to be well prepared and be willing to contribute to that effort.
所以，正如博士刚才您有提到，台湾这一次的反应可能比起其他国家在最刚开始稍微快了一点，就是过去曾经有过像 SARS 这样的经验，以至于我们这一次有了 COVID-19 的经验之后，面对下一次不知道从哪突然又冒出来的可能不一样的病毒，可能又造成了一个 pandemic 的时候，我们因为有这一次的经验，或许也会帮助 global wide 全世界大家在共同面对的时候。有了经验，下次可能会做得更好，就对了。
Yeah, I think in the U.S. we certainly have learned a lot, and if you look at what the U.S. government, particularly NIH, the National Health Institute, is doing, we are preparing for a pandemic caused by many different viruses, bacteria, and other pathogens. So this is what every country with technical capabilities should be doing, because this is one of the biggest threat to our overall health and security.
那就这一波的 pandemic 来说，现在好像已经有一些研究单位开始在评估会有第一批可以脱离这一次 pandemic 的国家，还有可能可以脱离的时间。像路透他们就访问了10几间主要的一个研究单位，他们就认为点名了像美国呀、英国、葡萄牙跟印度这几个国家。那主要是因为疫苗接种率蛮高的，然后又有自然免疫力的形成，认为这会是第一批脱离大流行的国家。那博士您的看法，接下来全球的疫情 到底会走到什么样的阶段开始趋缓？因为您刚才也有提到，这中间还有我们进入到秋冬这个季节的因素，还有包含其实我们现在在美国 even 都已经疫苗打了这么多了，但还是有蛮多的确诊的病例在每一天都会出现，所以真的就我们可以开始想说，它真的就可以走到整个疫情的尾端了吗？
I think these places you mentioned, like the US, Britain, India, it's true they have been vaccinating more widely than Taiwan has. But these are also places that suffer a great deal and endure a great deal of devastation due to extensive spread of the virus. So there was a high price already paid, but that certainly served as motivation to get vaccination and treatment going. And now, as I said earlier, and I will repeat myself here, but we now have the means to convert a disease with high death rate into a disease with low death rate, almost flu-like. And this, I think, will allow us to adopt a lifestyle that's closer to normal and keep the damage low and reopen and return to some semblance of normalcy. And I think that's what we're all shooting for. This virus won't disappear completely. It will hang around for years to come. But I think we will be able to manage. I think the outlook for the long term is good because of the available new tools.
所以就长期来看，有这样子的一个历程还是好的哦，而且真的，我觉得博士在今天访谈当中不断的提醒我们大家不要害怕，因为疫情走到现在这个阶段，科学界的努力之下，已经把这个疫情可能导致的高死亡率以及高重症的状况，现在整个局势是基本上已经完全扭转过来了。那同时还有不断的新的疫苗、新的药物持续都在开发哦，包含在台湾哦，我们民众也会接种的台湾我们自己制的国产高端疫苗，刚才博士也大概有提到一点点哦。那目前我们高端疫苗已经是获选参加 WHO 的一个团结试验疫苗计划，所以 WHO 就会资助来帮高端进入到接下来的3期试验。不过整体来说，在国际上哦，好像高端疫苗基本上还没有被这么普遍的认可。那不晓得现在在国际上，尤其是在科学界，怎么样来评价台湾国产这一支疫苗，以及在未来高端疫苗真的能够进入到国际市场的可能性。
Yeah, I have no firsthand experience with the Gaoduan vaccine. I have read the paper that's published on the phase 2 study of the Gaoduan vaccine. And I would say that, obviously with those phase 2 results, you should move on to a phase 3 study. I understand that's very difficult to do in Taiwan, given the low infection rate right now. So it has to be done elsewhere. And WHO has agreed to evaluate that along with many other virus vaccines. And it's not entirely clear how and where. So we need to learn more about those details. But I would say that comparing the report of the 综合抗体 neutralizing antibody levels, I would say that it's not particularly impressive. It's probably on par with AstraZeneca. So that would suggest to me it's not likely to have the high protection rate that the mRNA vaccines confer. I'm a little surprised that despite lack of phase 3 data, the vaccine is already authorized for emergency use, which is pretty unusual. That would not happen in the US or Europe or Japan. But I'm sure that's a hard decision that folks in Taiwan had to make. I would say the path ahead is quite difficult to show protection in a phase 3 trial. WHO is comparing so many vaccines, so where are they going to be doing the study? And is it still ethical, as I mentioned earlier, to have a placebo control? Because we already know that we have highly efficacious vaccines, and is it ethical to give people placebo? And without placebo, it's really tough to show your vaccine works. Then you have to compare your vaccine to other vaccines that have proven efficacy, and then you're comparing it with something good, and therefore the power of the study needs to be greater, and the number of subjects enrolled would have to be larger. That would drive up the costs, take much longer to enroll, and all that in the face of available proven products, it's going to be pretty tough. But I would say, based on the data I've seen so far, those who received the Medigen vaccine probably should get a boost with the mRNA vaccine if that's available.
不是刚才非常中肯的提出自己的看法跟观察，不刚好我觉得听到一个蛮重要的点，就是说，其实博士也能够理解，在台湾，从台湾的角度要开发自己的国产疫苗，在政策上面的困难度，以及为什么必须要这样做。但实际上面对到国际这么多的这个平台，都同样的一起在开发，这其实竞争上是非常的激烈。而我们同时也看到，像这一次 COVID-19 的病毒，它必须要全球一起合作，整个国际上一起合作来 fight 这个病毒。所以就整个国际市场以及跟世界接轨的角度来说，在这一次包含了博士您来观察台湾国产的高端疫苗在整个研发的过程，还有或者甚至台湾整个在防疫的阶段跟国际上之间合作，您觉得台湾本身在生技医疗相关的面向产业或是政府在政策面，如果说真的更希望能够跟世界接轨的话，我们接下来应该要做一些什么样的改变或调整吗？
Well, I know for a fact that Taiwan has tried very hard to advance its biotech and pharmaceutical industry. Taiwan has the financial resources to do it. But, Taiwan is small, doesn't have the critical mass of scientists and other researchers in the area, and it doesn't have a long history of a pharmaceutical industry to build on. And so it's very hard, and I know that many in Taiwan now for many generations of leaders have tried to stimulate this sector without a lot of success, I must say. But that's because the challenge is so tough. And also, Taiwan is very good in medicine. It's very strong, but it's not a world leader in basic research and particularly in basic medical research. And so the biotech and pharmaceutical industry generally spin out of academic laboratories. And there's just so few of them in Taiwan compared to places such as the US. So it's hard, but the government has to keep trying. It has to invest, and I think it has to be bold in its investment. Cannot say that I'm just going to invest a little bit. I think the model for the semiconductor industry is there. Taiwan was very, very successful, is now a world leader. And that's because back then the government was bold, and then there was a large critical mass of people who were recruited back to Taiwan to launch that industry so successfully. I think, many of us have tried to think about how to do that with the biotech sector, but so far nothing has worked very well, but that doesn't mean we should stop trying. And the other thing I would say is don't let politics get in the way. And we have seen, again, Taiwan government supporting certain companies, and then when there's a change in leadership, that company is then trashed, and that's like ruining your own child, and that's not a formula for success.
真的非常谢谢博士哦，这是从跨海来的观察，给我们非常中肯的建议。那节目的最后，博士刚才不停的告诉我们观众朋友，就说不要害怕，不要害怕，我们要学习怎么样跟这个病毒共存，然后恢复到正常的生活。那在最后，除了这方面的建议之外，不晓得博士最后一点点时间，还能不能够再给我们一些其他，就面对我们未来在疫情可能会出现的变化呀，我们应该要怎么样来看待啊，或者给我们一些什么样的鼓励
？Well, I think I'm very proud of how Taiwan handled the early part of this pandemic, and many of my U.S. colleagues have, given me praises for Taiwan's effort. But I think we are learning that Taiwan cannot rest on that. I think it should strive to return to normal. This lockdown mentality cannot sustain for much longer. I think we all need to return to our normal life, and we got to figure out a way. And now we have really tools at our disposal. And now for Taiwan, the issue is how to access the tools, and not only the tools, but the best ones, because I think the Taiwan people would deserve that. I know growing up in Taiwan, my parents did not raise me to be a C student. They wanted me to be an A student. And I think when we go for vaccine and drugs, we should go for the best, and protect our population the best we can.
非常感谢博士哦，抽空您这么宝贵的时间来到我们 TVBS 的大师讲堂。我觉得今天跟博士之间对话，真的比较客观的角度哦，来帮我们能够更多的清楚的看到现在我们台湾还能够做什么，我们应该撇出一些什么样的干扰，好好的思考。在接下来很快就要进入到2022年了，如果这个病毒不会消失的话，那我们的日子应该要怎么过呢？今天博士这段话，我相信大家心里头都已经有了答案，大家都可以来好好思考了。谢谢博士，谢谢您，
谢谢您。